Well, Tom, not all sweetness and light this morning exactly, but nonetheless talking to Nick Damon there.
I think when you're a reporter in the pit lane, you must have your facts absolutely 100%, because if they're not, and in that instance Tom picking up on the issue of these court issues very tersely, telling Nick Damon, I keep calling him Matt Damon, Nick Damon, that this is an issue that was dealt with a month ago. Well, you know, leave those things on the side. It's one of those issues that it tends to be highlighted when maybe it shouldn't have been. And Tom really looking forward to a qualifying session and not looking back on what may have been somewhat of a painful issue.
That's right, but certainly different stories coming out, so but we'll leave that one for now. The deal with Arrows and Jos Verstappen, of course, ending at the end of last year, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen joining the Arrows team for this season with Enrique Bernoldi alongside him, and we'll see how they get on in qualifying coming up a little later. But we're just a few seconds away now from the start of this second 45-minute session of free practice, and they will take the opportunity to put in some qualifying runs here. Qualifying being so crucial at Monaco, you can't afford to spend all your time trying to set the car up for the race and then find yourself stuck behind 5 or 6 cars that you should have qualified ahead if you'd done a little bit more homework. So that's what they'll be doing. They'll be doing their homework in the next 45-minute session and trying to get those cars perfect for the 1 hour of qualifying that starts at 1 o'clock local time, 12 o'clock in the UK. Jenson Button fired up this weekend. We've seen his performances already, putting him ahead of the Williams and the McLarens, and we'll find out later today whether he can actually qualify ahead of them on the grid. The pit lane is now reopened, the track temperature almost at 30 degrees, and things just beginning to develop, and we'll see how Jean Todt and Ferrari managed to perform. Out on a worn set of tyres by the looks of things for Michael Schumacher, one of the first to come out on this open pit lane. Jacques Villeneuve is just ahead of him. Kimi Raikkonen, tyre blankets, keeping those tyres fully up to temperature until the very final moment. But there you can see a very, very well scrubbed set of front tyres on the McLaren. In fact, quite a grainy tyre, if anything, there for Kimi Raikkonen.
It's very surprising that degree of graining on that right front of Raikkonen. Is quite surprising to see how much there is. Of course, this is the problem with soft compounds on tracks where the track is still working its way into being quick. But with this 45-minute session, I suspect that most teams will give each driver maybe up to 2 runs on a set of fresh tyres, either as Michael did with a new set of fronts and used rears, or a complete new set of tyres. To do 1 run would be difficult because you could hit traffic, and you need to, above all in this circuit, have a chance to find out what the entire lap would be like when you have to then make that qualifying run in just under 3 hours time. And it's a real problem for everybody, and more so now I think this weekend for those at the back. We saw qualifying last year being a time 1:17.430 for David Coulthard, great lap from the Scotsman. Well, we've seen about 2 seconds on average being the increase on most circuits. Whether 2 seconds is going to be the job here on qualifying, I don't know. I'm going to go certainly with a middle 1 minute 15. I'm going to stick my neck out and say pole will be about 1 minute 15, 1 minute 15, or 1 minute 15.5 or 0.6, and well, I'll be right or wrong, won't I?
We shall see, John. We shall see what happens. Michael Schumacher has 3 times taken the pole position here around the streets of Monaco. Still some little way off Senna's record of having taken 5 pole positions on the street track. David Coulthard snatched it away from him last year, and that was a good run for the McLaren Mercedes driver. Mika Häkkinen twice on pole here. That was back in 1999 and 1998. Heinz-Harald Frentzen himself took pole when he was driving for Williams back in 97. Schumacher in 96, and then Damon Hill in 1995 in the Williams. Michael's first pole position coming when he was driving for Benetton, and in fact that was the first ever pole position of his career at 1994 Monaco Grand Prix. Of course, a Grand Prix tinged with great sadness. It was the Grand Prix straight after the loss of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger at Imola, and the front row of the grid was actually left empty in respect to those 2 drivers.
Yes, and also it was a weekend when Carl Wendlinger had a very, very unpleasant accident coming down into the chicane. He lost it under braking, went sideways into the barriers, and Carl Wendlinger was then lifted off to hospital, and he suffered brain injuries. Thankfully he's recovered and back racing, but it just seemed not to let up. We thought after the the tragedies of San Marino that we might get a breather, and then Carl Wendlinger had that very severe accident.
Well, back to the action here in 2002, and it's all about this man and this car, isn't it? Particularly the F2002 chassis that seems to suit Rubens Barrichello every bit as well as it does Michael Schumacher, and the battle will be between them today to try and take pole position. Barrichello might have had to respond to team orders, but he still wants to show what he can do at the wheel of this new Ferrari. Kimi Räikkönen, meanwhile, enjoying his first outing with McLaren at this track. He drove for Sauber here last year. Once again, as we've seen this weekend, the Saubers didn't go particularly well last season. This time, Kimi's got a real opportunity to qualify on the front few rows of the grid.
Well, he qualified 15th last year. I suspect he's going to be well up the list this year. Potential top 3 rows of the grid, finished in 10th place. So we're looking forward to a more, let's say, productive Grand Prix for McLaren than he had for Sauber.
Michael Schumacher, one of the few drivers who doesn't live here in Monaco, of course, lives in Switzerland. Has had some plans to build a new home in Switzerland, actually denied to him some local opposition, so he's had to go back to the drawing board on that one. But no concerns at the moment. He's always been somebody who's enjoyed living in the countryside, and living in Monaco here has never particularly appealed to him. Finds it all a little bit too tight and possibly even claustrophobic. It is, there's an awful lot of people packed into a very small space here in Monaco. And he's not really one for the lifestyle, particularly of this part of the world. Just looking down at into the pits area, the Bridgestone area. It's all very quiet down there at the moment, of course. All the tyres are mounted on rims already, and the battle between the two tyre companies will probably as intense, if not more so, here at Monaco than any other Grand Prix we've been to so far.
Looking at a set of Ferrari rims with those Bridgestone tyres on them, and everybody gone back out on track pretty much. So just getting a feel for any changes that have occurred in the 30 minutes since that first part of this morning session started. Tends to take a couple of laps. Again, look at that very heavy graining on the right front of Ralf Schumacher's Michelin. We saw the very same graining on the front of Kimi McLaren. The right front tyre.
Looks like Mika Salo. Oh no, he's moved on again. Might have had a slight problem. Might have gone down the escape road at Saint Devot.
Yes, Takuma Sato still showing to be stopped on pit straight. Young Japanese driver. Just we get in our commentary position, we get all these various information. Car 10 off track and continued. Loop 8, turn 1. So he must have gone down the escape road at Saint Devot. So Takuma Sato still on a fairly vertical learning curve. Nevertheless, was 14th at the end of the first part of this morning session. Well and truly inside the 107% rule. Nevertheless, just a little bit of a reminder that it is very unforgiving, and you make a mistake braking into Saint Devot from about 170 miles an hour, maybe slightly more, in a very narrow braking zone. You're aiming literally into the eye of a needle into that particular corner. Get it wrong, just take the upper. Here we see it. In fact, this is he got it wrong big time. Well locked up, and that's the and you can see the black marks. And Takuma Sato decided, no, I'm not going to attempt to take the corner. He'd actually pretty much slowed down, but I think just maybe after all that has gone on in the last fortnight for this young Japanese driver, he decided the best thing to do is just to drive it down the escape road, do a do-not, and get back on track. And I think that was a sensible move.
Barrichello now just making his way around. This looks like a reasonable lap, but nothing too stunning as yet from the man who's been fastest this morning and is fastest on the weekend so far here at Monaco. Will he manage to retain that sort of performance? He was faster than Michael on Thursday, but neither of them were at the top of the... Oh, and off, and that is Fisichella, is it?
Yes, and Saint Devot as
well.
It's
Sato. It is Sato, I think, who's
same
gone
corner.
off.
It's the same corner he went off in that previous lap.
Oh dear.
Breaking into that Saint Devot corner. This time he's planked it straight into that barrier, and that is a huge setback for both Jordan and for Takuma Sato. That car will be lucky. Well, in fact, they've got a spare car, but they've only got that one spare car, so hopefully there's no structural damage to the Jordan, but he's planted it right. Let's have a look and see. Lock up again. Where is it? No lock up. Did he clip the barrier? I think he clipped the barrier on the inside, and that launched him across the track into the barrier on the opposite. So Takuma Sato, having been generous to him and saying he did the right thing one lap earlier, has gone and just blotted his copybook, and he will be a very, very sad young man.
That's a great shame for the Japanese driver. Well, let's hope that they can getting sorted for qualifying, but of course he won't be back out in this session now. That's it, and it's such a crucial session in which to try and get some running in qualifying trim. Jarno Trulli's on a quick lap, and he's just come through 4th fastest.
And great work again by the corner workers. Let's look again and see. Now there's no lock-up this time, but watch for the right wheel. There he goes, and you can see just tore some of the advertising off the hoarding, just being too greedy, taking too much of the corner, rode the curb, made contact with the barrier. That just then threw the car directly off to the left and into the barrier at the exit of Sandevo. Spare car cannot be used until qualifying session begins, and I'm sure Jordan will now be very concerned indeed that they've only got 2 cars. Well, they've got 2 hours between this and qualifying, so maybe if that car is not damaged, if that car is not too severely damaged, they can get it repaired. The spare is being set up for Sato anyway, but Gary Anderson and the engineers down in the Jordan team now looking and preparing. They can get back into the paddock, of course, to get the spare parts that may be required. Certainly a lot of them will be in the pits anyway. Nevertheless, something Jordan did not expect or necessarily need.
Interesting that the spare car is set up for Sato. They only have the 3 cars here this weekend, and perhaps it's in expectation that Takuma might make a mistake that they have the spare car set up for him. Although Fisichella, of course, is the one with likely to get the much better grid position. So if they had a mechanical problem on Fisichella's car, you might have thought that they would have the spare set up for him in case, and he can just hop over. Let's just look through the list of times at the moment. Barrichello fastest from Michael Schumacher, Montoya 3rd. You're looking at Ralf Schumacher, who's currently 6th, and Ralph's on a pretty good lap at the moment.
But Ben, he missed the chicane. He drove over the chicane, so this lap you can see car 5 missed the chicane, so this will not count. Ralph's backed off anyway, and either he's going to come in or he'll start all over again. So very quick out of the tunnel, missed his braking, just decided okay, go straight ahead. It's the easiest and most pragmatic thing to do. So begins the process all over again, and David Coulthard also out on track, going quickly as well.
So let's just watch with Ralf Schumacher down into Sandevo. This is where Takuma Sato hit the barrier, of course. There is Coulthard, and as you say, John, he's on a good lap, so we can watch him. He's a bit further round the lap, through the tunnel, down the hill towards the chicane. This is where Ralf went straight through a moment ago. David gets it into the corner neat and tidily, using a little bit of curb, and then accelerates back along this short straight towards the left-hander at the back. Watch the car react over the bumps, the manhole covers and curbs, all such a feature of this Monaco track that the driver has to cope with.
Well, Coulthard somewhere or other lost a bunch of time between 1st and 2nd sector, so either that was traffic we didn't see as he came from Casino down to Poitiers, again backs off, just builds up very gradually, then coming on to pit straight, his teammate Kimi Raikkonen sits there, those ice cold eyes that the team have really, well, they've just looked. He signed the contract and realised they've got a winner on their hands.
That's right, but he's got to have the opportunity, and every time so far, bar one, he's had a mechanical problem. Let's take a look as Coulthard now comes into Casino Square. Through the right-hander, down to Mirabeau.
So just under 0.3 of a second down on Barrichello's time. This was the part of track somewhere he lost the balance of that 2.5 seconds at the 2nd sector. Needs to be neat and tidy, but pushing very hard. Coulthard, you hear the traction control activating now through the tunnel up to 6th, 7th gear, 180 miles an hour on the exit. It is awesome.
Now flashing down into the chicane once again. You can hear the traction control working, and you can see, just looking from that rear facing camera, a lot more rear suspension movement than that front suspension movement we saw from Panis' car earlier.
Yes, 3/4 of a second away, and clearly it's the way that the suspensions on these cars work. The mechanical advantages that you get from the push rod in the front, of course, is much more the damper than you see on the push rod. Right up against the barrier on the exit. Coulthard looking to improve on 8th place. What's he going to do?
Third place.
Not bad.
That's a good effort from David Coulthard, and presumably on worn tyres. It puts him up there behind the 2 Ferraris, with Montoya now pushed back down to 4th position. So David seems to be relishing the balance of the McLaren Mercedes here this morning. Juan Pablo Montoya will be hoping that the Williams BMW has the same sort of pace, and in fact a better pace, so that he can continue that challenge in the World Drivers' Championship. Williams continue their struggle with Ferrari in the Constructors' title race as well. McLaren and Renault look to be battling just that little bit behind them. Pedro de la Rosa waiting to come back out in the Jaguar. He is still way down first.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 9th quickest, but he's gone personal best in first and second sector, so Tom Walker chose arrows driven by Frentzen, doing what we hoped it would do. Again, very scruffy looking front tyre on Nick Heidfeldt's. That's a Bridgestone tyre. Here comes Frentzen, so this will be an improvement from 9th place up to 5th.
So once again, the experienced German, a former pole sitter here around the streets of Monaco, improving on time.
But it was that corner Sandoval that he plunked his Jordan into some 2 years ago, and really for a podium finish. And great disappointment to Jordan. We heard Eddie Jordan in our Thursday show remember that particular moment. Every time you do so close to the end of a race, and it just lets so many people down, let alone yourself.
Yeah, that was disappointing. Year 2000 that was. He'd qualified 4th, was running 2nd, and crashed out. Was still classified 10th, but great disappointment when it all looked to be good for them to receive some 6 points. And Heinz made that crucial mistake, and of course that's always a part of the Grand Prix here. No matter what's happening, how settled down it looks, anybody can make a mistake.
Giancarlo Fisichella looking quite good. He's 10th quickest. He may go up a little bit further than 10th, does he? No, he doesn't. But he got personal bests in 2nd and 3rd sector. And now running behind, he's running behind Montoya.
Up the hill now for Montoya, and looking back you can just see Fisichella as Patrick Head has a detailed discussion with Ralf Schumacher. Now we're back with Juan Pablo Montoya dropping down the hill into the Grand Hotel hairpin. We've seen a few traffic jams here in the past in the race itself when people try and overtake. It's not really possible unless the other driver is prepared to give you some space.
This is a good lap for Montoya, quick in that first sector, well, relatively so. Looking to see how much he can claw back. He's about 0.2 of a second down to that first sector. Can he get it back in this middle sector? Very difficult. Easy to outbrake yourself coming into the chicane, then you lose all that benefit you might have worked to gain through Casino Square, down through Mirabeau, Poitiers. Now it comes down into the swimming pool complex, very quick. Again, personal best for Montoya. It might see a small improvement. Coulthard's about just over a 10th and a half quicker in 3rd place, so maybe a small improvement. You could see Montoya go quickest of the Michelin runners.
So let's watch him, last corner, and this is the acceleration through this sort of long sweeping right hand curve that leads them round to the line, and Montoya goes 3rd fastest to 1:19.20, 0.8 of a second slower than Barrichello's fastest.
Maybe he shouldn't relax too much, because Frentzen in 5th place also going quickly. Now Frentzen needs to gain a little bit more time, sectors 2 and 3, to put himself ahead of Coulthard. There's about 0.2 of a second for Coulthard in 4th, Frentzen in 5th. Probably achievable, but he needs to be really clean as he comes through this final Rascasse corner, then that short sprint up onto the little flick-flack right-left onto pitch straight.
So let's just see whether this does improve Frentzen's time. 5th fastest currently, and across the line he goes. He stays 5th fastest, a slight improvement in time, but it doesn't actually move him up the order any, but consistent running for Heinz-Harald Frentzen. And well, the Arrows team has had some reasonable results here in the past. You know, Mika Salo actually got a good 4th place finish here at Monaco in 1998.
Oh, Bernie just walking down the pit lane, traffic and of course cameras and cars. It's very difficult, very narrow indeed. In theory you're not meant to stay anywhere other than the left hand side of that little narrow, there's 2 strips in fact, that is for people to walk up and down, but if you get out to the right then you're in the pit lane, and it is a very dangerous place. Interesting. calling it's agony. And there Raikkonen is clobbered again at Saint-Devoux. Kimi Raikkonen, second time this weekend, the Finnish driver has planted the car. This one again, left front, looks fairly severe. Well, the left front, you can see it turn through 90 degrees. Possibly not as bad as the damage to the car on Thursday, but just an additional workload for McLaren, and whether they can repair this car or not. But again, they've bought just about every car the team has down to Monte Carlo.
He was having a close look there, wasn't he? I think he's aware of the damage he did to the other one and wants to see whether the monocoque's all right. Let's take a look. Did he hit that curb? Oh, yes, he did. Just touch it, I think, and fold back that left front.
Fortunately, the way the wheel folded back, I don't think there's going to be too much, I'm going to say, structural damage. I'd say there's virtually no structural damage at all. Literally at the outer end of the suspension joints and the wheel. Well, Michael's got the car back. I mean, 100% for doing so, Michael, and the team will breathe a sigh of relief and dive into it and find out what that particular problem is.
Well, those systems certainly do their job, don't they? Reverting to that sort of shutdown mode, but keeping the engine running just enough for him to be able to get back, and that will still allow him to get some qualifying run. We've got a bit of a scrapyard down here of broken Formula One cars. Takuma Sato's Jordan, and now joined by Kimi Raikkonen's McLaren. And this is such a typical story at Monaco. If you lose the rhythm, if you make a mistake early on in the weekend, as Kimi did on Thursday after just doing 6 laps, sometimes that seems to extend throughout the weekend. Let's hope that he can really get his head together for qualifying this afternoon. And even for the Iceman, it's going to be tough to pull out a really stunning qualifying effort, considering he's been into the barrier twice this weekend already. Pump the fuel out, really watch them dancing around the streets here.
Dancing around the streets when Pablo Montoya is doing something a bit special. He's gone fastest of everybody on this lap to that first sector, and here we join Montoya through the portiere.
Oh, and Irvine has taken the rear end off. Look, the back wing, rear wheels are all damaged. Fire from the back of the car as well, and that is at the swimming pool area of the track,
and that's going to destroy Montoya's lap. He's going to be very dissatisfied with that. You can see Eddie just plonked the car well and truly into the barriers, and let's have a look and see coming through the swimming pool. Eddie, that's rear suspension failure.
Yeah,
rear or tyre, one of the two. That you could see the right rear of the car was already right down on the ground. Not Eddie Irvine's fault, unless that was the result of clipping something. He may well have clipped a barrier on the exit of Tabac. That may well have caused the car then to get very loose going through the first part of the swimming pool. So we need to see that whole sequence again to see whether that was mechanical failure or driver-induced mechanical failure.
Well, certainly as we came into shot there, the car was in trouble, sitting down. as he came in through the corner, but as you say, John, I wonder whether he'd actually damaged it already on the lap. Of course, struggling. He wasn't on a particularly quick lap when he came around that time, certainly not an improvement on his personal best, and he's last of all currently.
Well, I mean, you can see coming out of Tabac, we know how easy it is just to caress, let's call it that, the barrier, and put an unnatural load into a suspension component, then it may begin a process of failure. Clearly, when he turned into the first part, that's the left part of the swimming pool, he was offline. He then had to react coming back, and then of course that's when we saw the car dip down on that right rear corner, and substantial damage around the back of the car. Fortunately, probably that end of the car easier to replace than the front, not so much structure of the monocoque. That's very much engine gearbox related.
Well, it's hanging over the water there, and yes, I can imagine that some people might want to drop it in the water.
This is the wrong angle. We need to see what happened. It looked pretty good there. Now watch. There it goes.
Wow.
Rear suspension failure for Eddie Irvine. No doubt about it.
What a picture. You see the back end of the car collapse as he comes through the right-hander. Well, that is a stunning shot, and that's the result as he comes into the barrier. Let's watch this again. Just watch the back end of the car. Boof, down it goes. The front wheel comes up in the air, and there's nothing that Eddie Irvine can do to control the car at that point with the front wheel off the ground.
Well, a bit of a wake-up call for Eddie, and he's had two offs. Again, neither have been his fault, Eddie. Went off on Bernaldi's oil on Thursday. There you can see the result of a mechanical failure, and bits and pieces of drive shafts and carbon fibre flying everywhere. Eddie back in the pits looking at it, and it's been a frustrating year for the Ulsterman, and I just wonder, what is he going to do? Is he going to stay with the team? I think he's indicated, I believe he's indicated he's prepared to stay for the team for half his driving salary of this year.
We've got another one off, John, and this time it's the Minardi of Mark Webber as he clambers out of the car, and that's a great shame. The Australian who's been driving very well here this weekend so far, but it's gone wrong. 19th fastest currently, and now he's done a bit of damage before the all-important qualifying gets underway. I don't know whether there might have been any fluids down from Irvine's car. Of course, that is a possibility. He's gone off just after the area that Eddie went off.
It's possible that some of them, maybe the lines that for the gearbox, any forms of external lining that I'm not quite sure what there would be, in fact, around the back of a car. But Mark has gone off, probably caught, as you say, unexpectedly by the very thing that caught out Irvine on Thursday. And of course, the only thing I will say, probably there were yellow flags out there the lap before for Webber when he came through, so he may well have known or been at least alerted to anything on the track. And now David Coulthard comes through clearly much more slowly and much more aware that not only is there a car off, but there's a lot of carbon fibre.
Well, a great shame that Irvine has had that accident, but let's just have to see what happens. Let's take a look. This is what happened to Mark Webber. He hit the curb, and it looks as though that got him a bit out of shape. Now, let's just watch as he continued on his way. He managed to get it back together. Now, he was turning into the second part of the right-hander. Oh, and that's where the car really doesn't respond as he might have expected, and that did look a little bit slippery through there to me, or whether he just carried in too much speed, bit hard to say. But that was the end result, Mark Webber putting it into the tyre barrier.
Well, Eddie stuck his hand up and said, guys, this one's down to me. It's difficult to see. He's seen the replay of the incident. From where we're looking at it, it did look clearly like it was a rear suspension failure. It just seemed to drop away very quickly. Whether because he attacked the curb very aggressively, maybe that was a contribution, but certainly the right rear of the car was on the ground before he hit anything solid. But Mark Webber's car, fortunately, maybe not so severely damaged, more superficial, we think.
So one for Mark Webber for Minardi, that's just as well. He's going to need it for qualifying, and we'll have to see whether they manage to get that car prepared. They should have that car out fine for the qualifying session. I just hope it doesn't affect Mark Webber's rhythm that has been going so well this weekend so far. So Jaguar have some work to do, Minardi have some work to do. This is typical of Monaco, that everybody starts putting it into the barrier as the pressure comes on, and trying to keep it clean, trying to stay out of the wall is the main target for everybody here. Niki Lauda still looks fairly relaxed about things. He had De La Rosa's car on the wall on Thursday. Irvine's car was on the wall on Thursday as well when he went off on oil. This time something seems to have broken and put him into the barrier. So it's a busy weekend for the Jaguar mechanics.
Yes, it's not a good weekend, and Nicky's been there on many occasions as well, not least of all in 1983 when neither McLaren, and not mention the other driver, failed to qualify. That was circumstantial, and also at a time when, of course, the Monaco grid was only a 20-car grid. Nobody told us that. We thought we were all right, but we had a problem on the Thursday, then it rained just before qualifying on Saturday. That's what happens in Monte Carlo. You can never anticipate. You've got to make it work for yourself.
Ferrari are making it work for themselves at the moment. Barrichello and Michael Schumacher heading the timesheets. We've got just under a quarter of an hour still to go in this morning session as Mark Webber walks his way back down pit lane, and he'll be somewhat frustrated after that, as it's denied him an opportunity to get a bit more of a feel for the car in qualifying trim. On board now with Rubens Barrichello, past the casino, past the Hotel de Paris on the left, heading down the hill, past the Café de Paris on the right, down into the Mirabeau. These classic corners, this classic track that has seen so much action over the years. So many great racers have performed brilliantly here, and Barrichello wants to add his name to that list of winners. But would he be allowed to? Even if he does take the pole position and lead the race, would he be allowed to take victory here at Monaco? Well, that'll be the big question for the weekend.
Well, I think it would be very hard for anybody to say you can't do it. If they wanted to implement the same kind of situation that they did in Austria, well, I think if they were going to do it, they would probably do it slightly better, as Ralph makes a little error, and that's on his way down into Portier. I don't know how he managed to get the car down there, but Ralph reversing. Well, what's he doing out of his Mirabeau, in fact, rather than Portier? So he got it wrong, and we've seen that Montoya twice went off there on Thursday, and the Williams have got a very, very effective reverse gear, easy to select, which is not always the case in some cars. And Montoya and Ralf Schumacher now made a trip down the escape road into Mirabeau. Been a funny session, Ben, because it's been disrupted by those incidents. Montoya, in principle, getting caught out badly. He was on a lap on a set of new tyres where he was quickest of all in that first sector. So now we've just got 11 3/4 minutes of the session remaining, and it's going to be a very intense 11 3/4 minutes.
It is indeed, yes. I wonder if we're going to see the rhythm re-establish in this session. As you say, that has rather been broken, and now we just want to see some good clear laps now. Well, this is Ralf Schumacher. This was the rear view of him going down the escape road. As you mentioned, Montoya had similar braking problems there yesterday. May just have been braking a little bit too late. Now, a moment or two ago, Nick Damon caught up with Eddie Irvine. Let's see what he had to say about that incident.
Eddie, we've seen the replay. It looked very nasty from our perspective. How did you find it?
Obviously, it's not ideal, but the cars, I think the rear of the car is totally destroyed. But just clipped the curb in the middle of the swimming pool and lost the rear. But we're in trouble.
On the replay we see, it's obvious your rear suspension actually failed as you went over that first part of the curb. Have you touched the barrier before?
No, I don't. I think I just touched the curb on the inside, and that brought the rear up, and it's just spun. That's what I think happened. I don't think with any failure.
Thanks, Eddie.
Well, I don't think he's looked at the replay enough yet, because it's fairly clear from our pictures, and his engineers will soon tell him that something broke on it.
Well, maybe this whole contract situation, Eddie, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, has indicated he's prepared to drive for the team for 50% of the income he's receiving this year. In the meantime, maybe not wanting to sort of say anything negative about the team, and we know that he can be, let's say, sharp-tongued at times. This time he's being sweetness and light.
This is a hard-pushing lap from Barrichello, but Montoya is on a quick lap, and that's why Patrick Head is looking so intent at this moment.
And Ben, he's the first driver, I think, all weekend who's got into a 119 in that first sector, 199.18. Very shortly will be coming. Oh, you can see the back end just getting away. Montoya, this is where he lost it in the race last year, half a second almost up on Rubens' time. So we're looking at a 17, possibly 7.8, 17.9.
Let's watch him now. The last few bends. First gear accelerates away. Traction control cuts in. This is a great lap from Montoya. This might give us an indicator of the pole position time later on. 17.6, so slightly slower than last year's pole time of David Coulthard, a 17.4, but a big improvement on Ferrari's best so far.
But a long way away from a middle 1 minute 15, I'm anticipating. And maybe I've got it wrong. As Heinz-Harald Frentzen doing a good lap, personal best, first and second sector, 7th quickest currently. And can he find another 10th to put him 6th ahead of Coulthard? 5th! Frentzen ahead of Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard.
Great stuff from the German. So Frentzen now moves well into that top 5 now with the 5th position, 19.133, and the Arrows team hoping for more of the same come the qualifying session itself. Teammate Enrique Bernoldi is now 15th, so he's still quite a long way down the order. May see some improvements from him later on with just 8.5 minutes of this session to go. Jenson Button waits, he's 4th fastest. Ralf Schumacher there, 6th fastest currently. Having watched Montoya's performance, I wonder whether he's going to come out and do something similar.
Well, Ruby baby, Rubens Barrichello, lead Ferrari driver here so far today. Personal quickest in that first sector. Barrichello through the chicane, exits to the chicane, now down to the tarmac.
So let's watch him through here. The car looking stable. Barrichello using the curbs. He's backed off now though, isn't he? He's slowed it down. I wonder if he'll stay out for another lap.
Well, there's nobody ahead of Barrichello. He's got clear track. So I don't know why Rubens might have done that. He's got no cars ahead of him. In fact, with Barrichello, the next car is McNish, and he's halfway around the circuit. So there's only 3 cars. He's coming to the pits anyway. So there's only 3 cars on the track. Alan McNish is one of those 3.
Alan McNish, yes, great. That front end really responding well there. You could see it turning in beautifully. Let's watch him as he comes down highest speed of the track here, about 180 miles an hour. Hard on the brakes, keep it all together. Tricky braking area. Let's watch.
He's quick, but he's got his teammate to aim for. Nicosallo is 8th quickest. McNish currently 18th, but a good time for McNish.
Yes, coming up towards the second checkpoint. There it is, 1.7 seconds down on the fastest so far. So that would put him in fairly good shape, put him a little higher than he is at the moment.
Put him higher than Salo, who's currently in 8th place.
That's right, let's see where he ends up. I don't know if he'll be quite that far up, but we'll see as he comes across the line. Alan McNish moves up a little bit. Well, he's 15th, so that didn't really gain as much as he looked as though he might. The last sector, not a personal best, unlike the other 2 previous sectors.
No, it was maybe I was getting a bit excited there, but air temperature, track temperature coming up. 30 degrees on track, 25 ambient. Frentzen back in the pits, and good. The Arrows team, Mike Coughlin, of course, he is also in negotiations with another team, that is McLaren. So changes continuing throughout the field, throughout the paddock, and just its stability. Why have we not have some more stability going on amongst the teams?
Yes, engineers move more than drivers, it seems sometimes, but it's all part and parcel of building the top teams. The top teams want the best engineers that they can get hold of, and so they tend to move around a lot between the different teams. Montoya, well, he's pretty stable at Williams at the moment and has got a very stable technical team around him, one of the best in the business, there's no doubt about that, and top engine as well, thanks to these 2 men, Mario Tyson and Gerhard Berger. Berger having to decide soon whether he's going to stay as boss of BMW Motorsport. His contract up for renewal. And he says he's a bit split about it. He'd love to spend more time with the family, but he's a deeply competitive person.
Gerhard Berger's the best deal maker in the paddock of ex-drivers, whatever. He's not going to say what he wants to do. He wants people to... He's a good deal maker, put it that way. We've just got 5.5 minutes remaining. There are 4 cars out on track. It is about to become a very, very principality with the remaining, well, just under 5.5 minutes to go. This is the last opportunity teams have to get the indication. Of course, they got that 1 hour qualifying itself, but this is crucial, these remaining 5 minutes for everybody, except for, unfortunately, for Irvine and for Mark Webber and Kimi Raikkonen, all in the barriers.
David Coulthard now on a charge. Let's just ride with him a second. One of the masters of Monaco, no doubt about that. Pole position last year. Let's watch.
That's quick down there, isn't it?
It is fast, isn't it? And look at his time. Only 8 thousandths of a second slower than the pace that's been set by Juan Pablo Montoya.
So David Coulthard looked very, very good through the casino. You could see how fast it is, the onboard shot. Out through Portier, he leaves himself plenty of room. He doesn't run up against the barrier. Maybe have to feather the throttle as a consequence.
Now, keep it under control here. There's a combination of attack and patience around this track that is nothing like any other track. Through to back. This one, and again through the swimming pool.
And Bernoldi's done a good job for Arrows as well. Coulthard fastest of everybody through that second sector and quickest. so far of all we've seen. So Coulthard could be quickest by a middle 117.
So the same tyres that Williams are using, and it looks as though the McLaren Mercedes has a little bit more pace than the Williams. Let's see what sort of pace this puts him onto. Montoya currently fastest. Is this enough? Yes, it is for Coulthard. He goes fastest on a 1:17.506, and that's a tenth of a second faster than Juan Pablo Montoya in the Williams.
And it's also a tenth of a second slower than this man's pole position time from 1 year ago.
Once again, look how he uses the curb but keeps the stability. He knows just how hard to hit these curves. That's a measure of the experience of Coulthard, just judging it to perfection.
Also for David Coulthard, he's found the confidence. He's got a car set up. He feels he can really lean on the car. He can throw it into a corner. No, the rear corner is not going to turn and bite him.
So Barrichello, not on new tyres, is also now seeing what the Ferrari will do. This will give them an idea, but I wouldn't think will be quite as quick as potentially they can go. And look at him sliding out of Casino Square. Great view. You might have traction control, John, but you can still slide these things around.
Yes, it's pretty quick, but he's go. De Rosa, I think he got out of the way. I don't think it affected him too badly. But Button now, Jenson Button, 1:19.998, almost as quick as David Coulthard through that first sector.
So we'll concentrate on Barrichello for the moment. That first sector, 20.006. Michael Schumacher.
Look at his face!
Well, he's intense, as we heard from Ross Brawn when he was talking to us earlier on. Michael always intense, and perhaps what happened in Austria making him even more so this weekend as he watches Barrichello. Barrichello again hopping the curves. Down on time from Coulthard, but not by that much considering he's on used tyres. It shows that the Ferrari is definitely going to be challenging for pole position, much as we might expect, but the Michelin teams could be closer. Coming through then to complete the lap. Let's see whether this is going to be any better for Barrichello. Cross the line, third fastest, and we gather in fact that he may well have had new rears on, so it was used fronts, might have had new rears on, so that gives an idea that the Ferrari team Bridgestone are in a battle this weekend, there's no doubt, against those Michelin tyre cars, and perhaps but that
Jarno
does explain
Trulli is the man.
face.
Jarno Trulli now fastest in that first sector, about 1:19.879. Jarno Trulli currently in 13th place. Looking, Trulli is French in his ways. Trulli's got pretty much a clear track. He's just coming out of the Portier corner now. She's got clear track. Montoya is the only car, and he's what, quarter of a mile ahead of him. Here we are. Jarno Trulli under brakes into the chicane.
Good and tidy through there, no problems. Now let's watch, can he maintain this very quick lap? The Italian has gone well here in the past in qualifying for look at that was great.
Fastest of all in the second sector.
Fantastic through there, he had the car right on the limit, up against the Armco barriers. Now through Rascasse, lots of lock applied. Listen to the engine out of the last corner. Oh, look at him slide it. This is going to be quite a lap from Jarno Trulli. Is it enough to go fastest across? Yes, it is. A 1:17.429, and that's a thousandth faster than Coulthard's pole time.
From P1 to P2, there is the flag to conclude the final session before qualifying.
Well, what a qualifying session we have in prospect now, John, because we have a Renault, a McLaren and a Williams as our top three at the end of this session. Michael Schumacher denied the opportunity to get out there at the end with some sort of technical problem on the Ferrari, and for once a problem afflicting Michael Schumacher as opposed to Rubens Barrichello. Barrichello ended up fifth fastest, and the Ferraris do have a battle on their hands. One or two still finishing off laps here. Olivier Panis is on quite a good lap. He's currently 12th, but has set a personal best through that first sector, and the second sector he hasn't because he got a little held up.
Yeah, Pedro de la Rosa got in his way, but good times. Giancarlo Fisichella is 8th, Felipe Massa 10th, Heidfeld 11th, Panis is currently in 12th. He may well have improved on that, but I think traffic in the swimming pool area will prevent Olivier Panis. Let's look down and see. Panis stays, yes he does, stays 12th.
Well, a very interesting end to this first session of free practice. A session that got a little broken up and interrupted by offs and incidents. Michael Schumacher having technical problems for once and not looking happy about it.
Michelin, Bridgestone, Michelin, Bridgestone. Looks pretty conclusive at this point.
At this point, it looks good for Michelin, you have to say, but it may be a different story come the official session. Rubens Barrichello, 1:18.309 he set here, and that's just under a second off the fastest pace set by this man, Jarno Trulli. Can he really show the Renault, put it up onto the front row of the grid? That would be a stunning performance. And we're just going to have to wait and see until that qualifying session starts in a couple of hours' time. And again, they're coming around onto the grid now to do some practice starts. This is the allocated area. It is the grid. It's the only place they've got room enough to do their launch control starts. Normally we see them do them at the end of a pit lane at a conventional track, but here it's from the grid itself. Mika Salo taking the advantage to do that, as does David Coulthard.
That was better than we saw on Thursday from the Toyota. They left a bit of rubber, left little chirp marks, and that was a good start for Toyota this time.
Gives us a good comparison, and they're using both sides of the grid. Good for the front row of the grid, this, John, because the two guys that will line up on the front row will have plenty of rubber down in their slots.
They will do, but of course we've got to see qualifying. We've got to see the Formula 3000 race that will take place later this afternoon, and there's Porsche Michelin Super Cup on Sunday, and the little Renault Clio's that'll, drop more bodywork than you can ever shake a stick at around this track. What a look at that!
Yeah,
Brilliant.
cool everything as much as possible, please. Cool everything as much as possible.
Very interesting. It only seems to be about 9,000 revs at the point where the clutch gets dropped. It seemed to hold at about 9,000 revs, and then as it launched it went from 9,000 accelerated up, but you would expect more revs perhaps to have been on the rev counter before it set off.
Ben, I think it's about engine, the whole design of the engine, the way it operates, and I keep banging on about the Renault engine having so much torque, much more than maybe its contemporaries. Well, again, slightly around 8, 9.5.
Yeah, more like 10 actually. It was nearer to 10 for the BMW, so they used a few more revs to get it off the line.
But I think the Renault has got a very wide, fat torque band, and that's part of the reason why I think the car is working so well. It's not just the car, it's the combination of the car and a very user-friendly engine.
Alex Young making a practice start as well in the Minardi. And everybody getting an opportunity to make sure those launch control systems work effectively. McLaren had the problem last year where David Coulthard lined up on pole, but the car wouldn't run effectively off the formation lap, and he had to start from the very back of the field. Hence his problems with Enrique Bernoldi and others trying to fight his way through the order once again. Still managed to get into the points, but it was a disappointing result after what looked like a possible victory here last year. So in the second session of free practice we've seen Renault ahead of McLaren and Williams, and we don't see a Ferrari until we get down to 5th position. So that's a bit of a surprise. Michael Schumacher in 6th, but didn't get out at the end of the session to put in a qualifying run. They had technical problems that saw the car coast back, and they couldn't get it sorted. Button was quick, he was 7th. Fisichella, another good effort in the Jordan, and then Frentzen in the Arrows, and just behind Frentzen, Felipe Massa in the Sauber, ahead of his teammate Heidfeld. Then Panis Salo up well in the Toyota, ahead of Bernoldi. Kimi Räikkönen crashed again, I'm afraid. De La Rosa in 16th, McNish 17th, then Villeneuve. Sato, who crashed out early on in the session and missed out a number of laps. Mark Webber, another one of those to make contact, I'm afraid, with the barrier. Eddie Irvine, the other one to do that. He ended up 22nd fastest, and we'll have to see whether everybody manages to qualify today on the 107% rule. So we've seen some fun and games this morning, and lots of incidents. Let's take a look back over some of those incidents with a look at the highlights from free practice.